Let's get started right now.
Okay, okay.
So the
Thank
one
goodness.
Some
thing,
alarm is going on.
Thank
when I
goodness
speak,
for.
when I reach around the 25 minute or so, somebody give me
We'll give you a note, Fred,
and
for
I'll
sure.
try to
Yeah.
finish it up.
I'm like you, Fred. I'm not a computer person, so that's why my buddies
You're
I,
you're doing great.
Yeah.
Oh, look,
I wish,
your
I
audience
wish
is growing.
my computer person is my 12-year-old grandson, but he lives in Boston, so that's why I'm having trouble.
You're
Hello.
doing great. You've done great this morning, sir. You've done great.
Hey, hi, Dawn.
Hi. Hello.
This is for everybody. This is Dawn Mills. She is the mother of my beautiful 30. How old is Talia now?
34.
34-year-old daughter. And I want to be a grandpa already, Fred, but no luck.
Well,
Hi, Fred. Nice to meet you.
nice to meet you too.
Thank you.
We should get started.
Okay, get started. You want to get started?
So before we begin, everyone, I just want to give you a little tech heads up. It's a small group. This meeting's going to run about 35 minutes. So we'll get to that. So the Fred will give a chat and then there'll be a Q&A. It should be very manageable with this size. If you can identify yourself, if your name is not loaded, so I can see Dawn's name is there, Jerry's, Zachary, and Fred's, but we have somebody named Bex719. If you could just tell us your name or put it in the chat so the host can
It's me.
mark that down.
It's me. It's Betty.
Oh my God. Okay.
Betty.
Okay, Betty. Okay.
So I can change your name. Okay.
Can we see Betty or is
Okay,
It's up to Betty.
it's Betty Sparago. I'm cheering you guys on. This is wonderful.
okay, thank you,
Well, then I'm
Betty.
just gonna-
Okay. May I start my intro?
Now we're going to just get Betty in order
Okay.
so everybody knows.
I have to say that I'm now under more pressure than ever before because
All
Betty,
right.
Betty happens to be my boss. She's the one who books me for all the Zoom appearances and personal appearances, and I guess now she's going to grade me. So I'm under
Hey,
pressure.
Yeah, sure.
Hey, Fred,
Just lots of hugs.
what
just-
happens between you and Betty is none of my business, okay?
I love it.
Okay, I'm going to start. May I start? May I
Let you go.
Okay. I want to thank, first of all, I want to thank Betty Sparago of the Holocaust and Human Rights Education Center in White Plains, New York. I want to thank my technical guru here, Eli Dittersdorf, for helping me out with the technical aspect. And I want to thank Fred, and I want to thank everybody that's been here, that's joining us today. Now, when one hears the word Holocaust survivor, we think it is someone who survived the concentration camps. I firmly believe, and Fred, you are living proof, that any of our brothers and sisters who managed to avoid the death camps, as you did, sir, are all survivors. Our very, very, very special guest, and Fred gives me $20 each time I say the word very, okay? Our very, very special guest today is Fred Schoenfeld, a truly remarkable and inspiring story of survival. And Fred, that's all the time we have left. Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
Okay, Fred, you're up. You're up.
Okay. So first of all, I want to thank you for this invitation. I'm glad to tell you my story. As I said, I did not go to concentration camps, and for many years I didn't consider myself a Holocaust survivor because when I speak in schools, the first thing that the kids want to see, they want to see my number tattooed on my arm, which I do not have, and I'm fortunate that I didn't go to. But my kids kept insisting that I was in Europe during the Holocaust. I'm here today, therefore I'm a survivor. And after I thought about it, I realized that they were right. And since then, for the last 10 years, I've been speaking to schools and organizations and telling my story. So I was born in 1939 in a town called Košice, Czechoslovakia, which at that time was a democratic country. Their constitution was based on the United States Constitution, meaning freedom of speech, freedom of religion, everybody was the same. But unfortunately, in 1939, with Hitler's power rising, the country split into two, the Czech Republic and the Slovak Republic. The Slovak Republic became a puppet government allied with Hitler. And since my father's business was basically centered around Slovakia, we moved from Košice, which became Hungarian, and we moved to a small town in Slovakia called Presov. Presov was a town of about 25,000 people, small town, quaint, typical Eastern European town, and had a population of about 6,000 to 7,000 Jews. Tragically, out of the 7,000 Jews, only about 700 survived. So life, what was life in Slovakia in 1939, 40, 41, 42? Things were going okay. You know, there was anti-Semitism, but the Slovak government became a fascist government, and they started putting on all kinds of anti-Jewish regulations. You've heard of the Nuremberg regulations. The Slovaks put in they called it the Jewish Code. In 1941, they put in a Jewish Code, and it had 200 regulations aimed against the Jews. So in 1942, I was 6 years old. What do I remember about that? So I remember very clearly, as it was yesterday, I was in the first grade. I walked into my classroom, tried to get into my classroom in school. I was met by the teacher at the door telling me, "You're not going to your regular seat. You are going to the back row," where I sat with 3 or 4 other Jewish kids. I couldn't go to the park. There was a big sign, "No Jews allowed." The only place where we could go play as kids was in a large courtyard of our synagogue. However, to get to the synagogue was a problem too, because if you were walking, you're a 6-year-old kid and you're walking out on the street to the synagogue, most likely you would be met by a bunch of bullies twice your age and get beaten up. And I still remember my best friend's big brother had 2 German shepherds whom we would get on a leash, and he would escort us to the courtyard in the synagogue where we could play. Sunday mornings, my father used to take me to the movies. No more movies. Could not go to the movies. There used to be a curfew, especially on the Jewish holidays, when they wouldn't let us enjoy their holidays to go to visit friends or relatives. It was a curfew. I still remember my grandfather, who lived in a town not too far from us. In 1942, we tried to go on a Passover. We were going to go to his house to the Seder. So it wasn't my father, since he was in business, he had permission to use the trains. We went to his town, and I still remember we had to wait till the dark of the night. I remember my mother got dressed as a peasant in peasant clothes to look like one of the locals, and we snuck our way to my grandfather's house and have celebrated Seder. I don't know if you can see this. This is a picture of my grandfather and me. Can you see the picture?
Yes.
Yes.
It's a picture of my grandfather and me. The cute kid that was me. We spent the Seder with him that night, and it was the last time that I saw him. In May of 1942, he was put on a train to Auschwitz, and that's the last time I've heard of him. And the reason I know that it was May 10th, because they kept meticulous records. And if you go on the website to Yad Vashem, you'll find my grandfather's name and when he was born and all the details. So this is what I felt as a kid. But my parents, I can imagine what they must have gone through, because as a kid, I knew there was something wrong, there was danger, but I really didn't know exactly what was happening. But I can just imagine what my parents went through. I mentioned part of the regulations that they put on. Every Jewish family had to give a register with the government and give them their entire financial situation. They wanted to know everything that you owned. The other thing that happened was that Jews no longer could own businesses. They could work in the business, but they were not the boss. Here, you probably want to see, I even have a document here dated May 29th, 1943, where stating that my father no longer can own the business, and they put in a person who was running the business. So these were the things that were happening. So one of the things that I remember very, very specifically was probably a very, very, very close call that my family had. In 1942, they decided to round up all the single women to take them to a labor camp in Germany. And the town which we lived was a small town. The railroad tracks went right across the parallel to the main street, and we saw a big freight train coming in, and they were rounding up all the single women. And I remember my father coming running into the house, telling my mother and me to get into bed, and I was supposed to pretend that I'm sick, and she's taking care of me. And sure enough, in a few minutes, two huge policemen came in, and they told my mother to get dressed and go with them. My father kept pleaded that she's taking care of me because I was sick. There was a pause, and lo and behold, they turned around and walked away. And there was a very, very close call, and I will always remember that. So then later on that year, as I told you, Slovakia was a fascist country allied with Hitler. And Adolf Eichmann came into the country. He made a special deal with the government, where the government he was going to take all the Jews, and the government was going to pay him what would be today $2,000 per person for every Jew that they took, and on one condition, providing that make sure that they're not coming back into come back. And that's what happened. And then they started the deportations. However, Slovakia was a sort of an agricultural country, and most of the doctors, dentists, businessmen, accountants were Jewish. So they didn't want to get rid of them right away because, well, they could still use them. So some of these people would get an exemption. My father, being in business, got one of those exemptions. So what did it mean? It meant that we were safe. They weren't going to take us. However, once again, when the trains came in, they started loading, and if they had some room, you could be walking on the street with your exemption, and if there was still room in the freight cars, they could grab you and off the street and load you into the cars. So with that in mind, my father his business had a huge warehouse, and we went up to the warehouse. There was a big attic to hide while they were rounding up the Jews. So it was a big attic, big warehouse up in the attic. I was 6 years old. We had to keep quiet during the day. People were working downstairs, and any peep out of me could be the end. And to this day, I still marvel how my mother was able to keep me quiet, because I was known to be a pretty active kid, but they did it. And every day, one of my father's trusted employees would come in. I still remember he wore a long raincoat, and in the pockets, he would bring us water and food. And we stayed there for 7 weeks. While the trains were running. After that, the trains were gone. It was safe to come out. And after a few months of pause, the train started again. And once again, we went into hiding. And when that was over, which was starting in the summer of 1944. when we came out, most of the Jews in our area were gone. They were deported. There were many others who were hiding like us. And the government then issued the order that any remaining Jews in this area had to move to the western part of the country. So many Jews, some of the Jews decided to find hiding places where they were. But my parents, we moved to the middle section of the country, and we rented a place to live on, and we lived on a farm. So it was sort of safe, but you were in danger, but life was going on. In the meantime, in August of 1944, with the war was sort of coming to an end from the east, the Russian army and the Czech Free Army was coming into the country, and on the west were the Americans, General Patton's army. So many freedom-loving Slovaks started a revolution, uprising in the middle of the country, trying to hit the Germans, trying to cause all kinds of things, blowing up trains and stuff like that. Many hundreds of Russian partisans were parachuted to help them, and that was the situation in the summer of 1944. However, finally the Germans got tired of this, and they sent in thousands and thousands of troops to put down the uprising and take over the whole country. Which they, so we knew that the Slovaks of the uprising went back to their homes, but the Russian partisans had no place to go. So they went up to the mountains, the Tatra mountains, which are huge mountains, and we realized that we no longer could stay where we were. We wouldn't be safe. So we went up to the mountains with them. When I say we, in our group, there were about 35, 40 people. I was the second youngest one, and we found lodgings in a hunter's cabin, and that's where we were. And throughout the Tatra mountain range, every mile or two were similar groups of Jews hiding. And it wasn't safe because during the day, the Germans, even though they were losing the army, they still had time. They still had enough time to go up to the mountains to look for the Jews. But once again, we were lucky. They never found us, and we were up there. Now it was winter. It was winter time. Tremendous amount of snow, and we could already hear all kinds of artillery because the war was developing right below us in the valley below us. And another thing which I will never forget as long as I live, it was late afternoon in February 1945. It was a tremendous commotion. Everybody's got hysterics. We saw soldiers moving up the mountains towards us. We were sure that they had to be Germans. Who else could it be? But lo and behold, it was not. It was the Russian army together with the Czech Free Army. They were coming up the mountain. They were going to try to hit the Germans from the back, the Germans who were right in the valley below us, coming through the back. I never forget this big, beautiful soldier, tall soldier with a big machine gun, and he spoke Yiddish. He was a Jew. So there were many Jews who had joined the Free Czech Army, and they were part of it. So they told us that they were going to try to hit the Germans from the back, told us to stand still, and they would be back and come and get us. But it didn't turn out that way. The next morning we woke up to tremendous amount of artillery, tremendous all over the place. The soldiers were back. They told us that the Germans were dug in very deeply there. It could be weeks before they could be dislodged. and the Jewish soldiers told us they're going to come with them. So I remember there was, as I said, there were about 35 or 40 of us. They gave us instructions. We lined up single file and distance between each of us. And the main instruction was that when we would hear a whistling sound, we would have to hit the ground because those were bullets flying over our heads. And sure enough, we started moving slowly. It was in the morning, and I still remember crawling through the beautiful white snow. Every once in a while, running into a dead body, and still remember the white snow and the red blood. So slowly, we made our way. And by sundown, we crossed the fighting line, and we were free. We spent the night with the army, and the next morning we got a ride with them to our hometown. But what did we find in our hometown? We couldn't go back to our apartment, to our house. People were living there, using our furniture and everything. However, before we left a year before, my father buried in our backyard. He buried my mother's candlesticks, our menorah, and this Kiddush cup, which is now has become a treasure of my family. We use it on Shabbat, on the holidays. It goes to bar mitzvahs, weddings. As a matter of fact, 6 months ago, traveled to California for my grandson's bar mitzvah. And a month ago, we celebrated my other grandson, my older grandson, got married in Virginia, and this treasure is with us. So what did we find in our place? So as I told you, only about 700 Jews survived from our town, survived the Holocaust. I still remember every afternoon going to the town square where army trucks would come in, bringing survivors from the concentration camps, some of them still in their black and white uniforms. I remember having many happy reunions, watching reunions, and also many people who were not so lucky. So the war was over. Czechoslovakia was united again, and was going to be a democracy again. And people were starting to get back to try to establish their lives again. And my father was in business. 6 weeks after the war, he was back in business. Everything seemed to have been going okay. But in the meantime, there were many. I remember our town had at least 100 kids whose parents didn't make it. We had them in a one big, I guess you would say, orphanage. People from Palestine actually made their way to try to get them ready because the state of Israel was going to be established pretty soon. At that time, my father had 2 brothers and a sister living in the States, and right after the war, they sent him affidavits to come to the States. My father refused because he said, "Why should I go? I have everything here. It's going to be a democracy. There's no need to go." But they insisted, and he did file the papers, but he wasn't using it. So beginning in 1947, the communists started to take over the country, and it looked like this wasn't going to be a great place to live. And so most of the so 90% of the Jewish people were making plans to go to Israel, to the coming future state of Israel. And my parents and I were going to come to the States. I remember still being very sad because all my friends, they were getting ready to go to what was going to be the state of Israel. They were learning all the Israeli songs, and they were going to, and I was ashamed to tell them that I was coming to the United States. Anyway, in June of 1948, my parents and my sister, who was born after the war, made our way to the United States. By November of the 5 months later, the Iron Curtain fell. So once again, we got lucky. So here we are. So I was in the United States. I learned English. I went to school, got married, had children, and the rest is history. However, it was not the end of the story. My kids kept bugging me because they knew, unlike so many other Holocaust survivors who don't tell their story, it was too painful for them. They knew my story, and they kept insisting that we go back. They wanted to go back to Slovakia. Yes.
Hi, Fred. First, thank you so much. I don't mean to interrupt. We have about 12 minutes left.
Okay.
And that's my fault, Fred.
Okay. I just want to tell you, give me 3-4 minutes.
Please.
We went back. I never wanted to go back there, but one of the things that made me go there, remember I was telling you the man who was giving us food when we were hiding up in the attic. I knew he was no longer alive, but obviously his kids and his grandchildren were alive. And I wanted to go back there to tell them how their grandfather saved my life. I called up the city hall, and I told them I wanted if they could give me information about this person. They asked me, "Are you related?" I said, "No, sorry, can't give it to you." The reason for that was they thought I was coming back to get property. I also wanted to see if I could get him to the Yad Vashem as one of the righteous Gentiles. So it didn't work out, but I want you to know, to this day, I'm still I have a diary that I keep every day with me, my planner. In my I have here his name, Ivan Sagan. This is the man that saved my life, and I carry it close to my heart. Anyway, so we did go back there, and I could talk an hour just about my trip. It was nothing but anti-Semites. When I was there, the synagogue, there was only one Jew left in town. He was taking care of the synagogue and the cemetery. The day that we were there, they were whitewashing swastikas off the synagogue. So nothing has changed, and that's why I talk to kids, I talk to schools. The history is repeating itself, and we have to do whatever we can that it never happens again. And this is my fast version. Thank you very much.
And I appreciate that, Fred. Fred, let me ask you a question. And we talked about this before the podcast. As you know, immigrants are being rounded up by the authorities here in Los Angeles. What's your take on that?
It's history repeating itself. What can I say? It's the before the concentration camps, Hitler and all his friends, they were taking people off the street just the way what's happening here today. Exactly the same.
Folks, this is going to be recorded, and Zach will be sending you a link to the recording. I want to make sure you can also ask Fred questions. Please note Zach's email, zlmedia, media 63 @gmail.com is available. Send Zach a question. He'll connect with Fred and get you a response with the video. Please keep talking. The meeting will end on its own shortly, but carry on. Use it all up.
Yeah, please feel free to jump in and ask your questions to Fred. And again, I'm sorry for the short Zoom thing, but anyway, never mind.
Back, if I may.
Yes, please.
Yeah, Fred, a very moving story, obviously, and it touches us all. I'm curious because my wife's grandmother survived Auschwitz, and she was from the part of what is now Ukraine that was still part of Hungary then. So the Hungarian Jews were deported between Passover and Shavuot of 1944.
They were the
So,
last ones.
and you describe a different situation in Slovakia. Was that because the Nazis did not have the same control in Slovakia that they did in Hungary, or was they didn't invade, or what was different?
No, they left it for the Slovaks to do. They didn't have to do anything. They didn't have to do anything. The Slovaks did it for them.
And was there any thought from your parents or other members of your family to try to head west to be in a
There was
safer place?
there was nowhere. Where we were, there was nowhere to go.
If I may continue, you said you came to the U.S. after the war, just before the Iron Curtain fell. Can you tell me about where your family ended up in the U.S. and then where it branched out to California, Virginia, etc.?
When we came here, so I told you my father had two brothers living in Pittsburgh, so we went to Pittsburgh, and to Pittsburgh. But unfortunately, my father got sick. And we arrived in 1948, and 2 years later, before he even was able to get a start to do something, he passed away. So in 1950, my mother had a sister living in New York, and they brought us to New York, and and that's how I wound up in New York, and I've been living in New York since 1950.
So you were not in Pittsburgh during the Tree of Life?
No, I lived in Pittsburgh from 1948 to 1950, way before. Yes.
Okay. You mentioned what's your take on what's going on in Israel right now, Fred?
What's my take on? I have my. I don't think that I'm going to discuss politics here. It's a terrible situation, but there's no choice. They have to, we have to fight. I know there's different political issues there and whatever. I feel very connected to Israel, obviously. I have friends, family, whatever. I've been to Israel many times, and I live in every Friday. All I do is make about 7 phone calls to find out how I'm keeping track of 5 kids who are in the army in Gaza and all over the place, and that's about it. I really don't. It's a terrible situation, but we have to stay strong.
Fred, of your old friends from your hometown who ended up going to Palestine or Israel, are you in touch with any of them today?
There actually, I used to be in touch with all of them, but right now, I mentioned that I was the second youngest for my group, and to others, only 3 of us left, and I stay in touch.
What was it like coming to the United States? And by then you were around 10 years old or so, or even older. So try to learn English and get.
I was 12, and I remember coming to the States, and I always tell the story. We came on by boat on the Queen Elizabeth, and at that time my father gave me a Slovak English dictionary, and the first word that I looked up was ice cream, so I would be able to ask the waiter on the boat. So I had, I adjusted fairly well. I went to school, I learned English, and I really, I came at just the right age. But kids who came who were a little bit older than me, they had a tougher time adjusting, especially since I still have a slight accent, but kids who were older than me, they could not get rid of their accent, and that caused a problem for them.
Okay, Dawn, we are kind of short of time. Do you have a question for Fred?
Just a comment that the theme of how luck kept coming up for you and your family, and thank God that you were blessed with that luck and you're able to create your own legacy and your children. And thank you so much for sharing. It's very touching. I'm going to share your story with others too.
My pleasure. I'm glad I was able to do it. And thank you, Zach.
I want to second that motion I want to jump on what Dawn just said, and Fred, to me, you're an A-lister, bro. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I'd add an inspiration.
Thank
All
you.
right, folks. Just so you know, we're going to end in less than a minute. It ends sort of abruptly. That won't be happening in the future. We're going to make a nice, clean video. We'll disseminate that to a private YouTube channel so you can review that, Fred, before it's sent out to the rest of the guests.
Okay. Thank you very much for your technical help.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Fred.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Fred. You did amazing, sir.
Yeah. Okay.
You did really. You did, and you will get a nice video. So I'm going to end the meeting, everybody. And now you're a Zoom expert, Mr. Schoenfeld. Okay.
Okay. If I have any problems, I'll get in touch with you. You'll help me
Oh
out.
my goodness, please do. I'm always here to help.